Picture this, January 10th, 1982. You wake up in your bedroom and your breath hangs in the air like smoke. The windows, thick ice on the inside. Not frost, ice. The kind you need a knife to chip away. Your thermometer outside reads minus 26 degrees Celsius, England's coldest temperature ever recorded. And this wasn't just one brutal morning, this was week 7 of a winter that would kill, that would test every person in Britain, that would show you what survival really means. From early December 1981 through mid-January 1982, Britain faced a winter that didn't just inconvenience people, it ended lives. Over 100 deaths directly attributed to the cold, thousands more from accidents, hypothermia complications, heart attacks while shoveling snow. This is the story of how Britain survived the deadliest winter ever. For those who lived through it, the memory isn't just of the cold, it's of funerals delayed because the ground was too frozen to dig, of elderly neighbours found too late, of discovering that survival sometimes meant making impossible choices about who got the last of the coal. It began quietly in early December 1981. The month had started mild. Aberdeen recorded 15 degrees Celsius on the 3rd. People walked around in light coats. Winter felt like it might skip Britain entirely. Nobody knew what was coming. But on December 7th, everything changed. The wind veered northerly. Arctic air swept down from Scandinavia, and it brought death with it. By the morning of the 8th, heavy snow had fallen across southern England. 15 centimetres in Wiltshire and Berkshire. The roads became ice rinks overnight. Airports shut, trains stopped, telephone lines came down, and nobody had been warned properly. Thousands of people set off for work that morning and found themselves stranded. Some didn't make it home. Cars abandoned in ditches, buses giving up halfway up hills. And in those cars, people trapped, hypothermia setting in as temperatures dropped and help couldn't reach them. The cold gripped tighter. By December 11th, another blizzard hit. This time, London took the worst of it. 25 to 30 centimetres of snow piled up in the suburbs. Parliament struggled to function. The Queen herself got stranded for hours in a Cotswold pub. But while she was safe and warm, others weren't so lucky. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Ambulances couldn't get through. Fire engines stuck in drifts, people having heart attacks, strokes, falling on ice, and no help could reach them. Response times that should have been minutes turned into hours, and some people, they just ran out of time. And then came December 13th, the night Britain truly froze. Temperatures plummeted below minus 18 degrees Celsius across huge parts of the country. Shawbury recorded minus 25.2 degrees Celsius, England's coldest December temperature ever. Wales hit minus 22.7 degrees Celsius at Corwin. Records that had stood for over a century shattered in a single night. 2 ships sank in the English Channel that week. Gale-force winds turned snow into blinding storms at sea. 16 sailors lost their lives. And on December 19th, tragedy struck off the Cornish coast. The Penly lifeboat capsized trying to rescue a damaged cargo ship. 8 crew members from the lifeboat died, 8 people from the ship, 16 lives lost. The sea claiming brave men who'd gone out into a storm that should never have been faced. Britain mourned, but the cold didn't care. It just kept coming, and the death toll kept rising. The cold didn't just arrive, it moved in and started killing. Your breath froze mid-air. Ice formed on the inside of windows. Thick ice you'd need a knife to remove. And in the morning, waking up meant survival. The bedroom was a freezer, the bathroom worse. Getting dressed meant moving fast because staying still meant hypothermia. Central heating was a luxury most families didn't have. You relied on one coal fire downstairs, one room with heat. The rest of the house became Arctic. Families huddled together in the living room, wearing every jumper they owned, blankets wrapped around shoulders, hands reaching toward flames that barely warmed you unless you sat right beside them. And you had to be careful, because people were dying from carbon monoxide poisoning desperate for warmth, burning anything, blocking vents, not understanding the danger until it was too late. At night, going to bed meant diving under heavy blankets, sometimes 4 or 5 layers. Your clothes for tomorrow laid out at the foot of the bed, because leaving them in a drawer meant putting on frozen fabric. Some people slept in their coats, not because they were poor, because it was the only way to wake up alive. Elderly people didn't have the body heat to survive, pensioners living alone in unheated flats. Some were found days later, frozen in their chairs. Others made it to hospital with severe hypothermia, but never recovered. The NHS logged case after case. Frostbite, hypothermia, falls on ice leading to broken hips, broken skulls. The snow kept coming. December 20th brought more, then the 27th, wave after wave. By Christmas Day, snow lay 33 centimetres deep around Lincoln, 10 inches in North London. And the problem wasn't just the snow, it was the cold. Temperatures stayed below freezing for weeks. The snow didn't melt, it piled up, layer upon layer, week after week. Rivers froze solid, harbours iced over. Parts of the southern coast saw the sea itself freeze. Ice blocks left on beaches when the tide went out. Fishing boats trapped, and inland roads vanished under drifts that reached 6 meters in some places. Entire villages cut off. No deliveries, no post, no way in or out. And that meant no medicine, no insulin for diabetics, no heart medication, no way for doctors to reach patients who desperately needed them. People died waiting for help that couldn't get through. Your mum probably started stockpiling in early December. Tinned food, extra bread, bottles of milk lined up because the fridge couldn't hold them all. Running out wasn't an option. The shops were closing, roads blocked. If you forgot something, you did without. Getting to the shops became an expedition. Queues formed outside bakeries first thing in the morning. People waiting an hour just for a loaf of bread. Shelves emptied fast. Sugar disappeared. Butter rationed by shopkeepers who knew their regulars. And if you lived in a village cut off by snow, you relied on whatever you'd stored. Some families went 2 weeks without fresh milk. Power cuts happened constantly. Over 250,000 homes lost electricity during December. Snow and ice on overhead lines caused failures, short circuits. And when the power went, everything stopped. No heating, no light, just candles and coal fires. But here's the thing. When power went out, people with electric heating had nothing. No backup, just cold, deadly cold. Families sat in the dark, burning furniture to stay alive, praying the power would come back before the last stick of wood ran out. Schools closed, not for a day or two, for weeks. And while some children thought Christmas had come early, for others, it was terrifying. No school meant no school meals. For poor families, that free lunch was survival. Without it, children went hungry, parents skipping meals so their kids could eat. Every street had its sledging hill. Kids spent entire days racing down, trudging back up, soaking wet but grinning. Your clothes soaked through, your gloves stiff with ice. But nobody cared. This was the winter of a lifetime. Snow so deep you walked on top of hedges and gates, drifts taller than adults. But behind the fun, life was deadly. Elderly people struggled. Hypothermia cases flooded hospitals. Doctors trudged through waist-deep snow making house calls. Their bags frozen solid, trying to reach patients who couldn't reach them. Some roads stayed blocked for days. Helicopters dropped supplies to isolated farms. Bread, medicine, essentials. Farmers watched helplessly as livestock froze in fields, sheep buried under drifts, cattle unable to move. By the time January came, thousands of animals had been lost, the financial cost devastating. But more than that, farmers found their animals too late, dug them out frozen solid. As December ended, people hoped the worst was over. A brief mild spell on New Year's Day, rain instead of snow. Things started melting, relief spread, but it was a trick. The cold returned on January 3rd, heavier, meaner, and this time it brought something worse. January 7th, 1982. Snow began falling that evening across Wales. Not a light dusting, not a passing shower. This was a blizzard, and it didn't stop. For 36 hours, snow kept falling, relentless, driven by gale-force easterly winds. Temperatures hovered between -2 degrees Celsius and -4 degrees Celsius. The snow was dry, powdery, and the wind moved it everywhere. By the morning of January 9th, much of Wales lay buried, 60 centimetres of level snow across Glamorgan and Monmouthshire. But the drifts were the real horror. 6 meters high in exposed areas, 20 feet of snow piled up by the wind. Cars disappeared completely, houses became igloos, gates and hedges vanished under white walls. South Wales was cut off for 3 days, roads blocked, railways stopped, airports shut. Millions of people couldn't get to work. London commuters gave up after hours of trying. The Midlands ground to a halt. And in Wales, entire towns became islands, isolated, waiting for rescue. The army arrived, troops with shovels, clearing roads 1 meter at a time, delivering bread and milk to villages that hadn't seen a delivery van in 2 weeks. Helicopters buzzed overhead, dropping supplies, lifting out people who needed medical help. It was a military operation, and it took days. In Swansea, locals listened to Swansea Sound radio all day. The station became a lifeline, coordinating help, broadcasting appeals. Anyone in a 4-wheel drive, free to pick up a lady in labour. Mrs. Jones has run out of bread and her medication. Can someone deliver? People responded. Strangers with Land Rovers became heroes. Farmers opened their homes to stranded motorists. And in Horton, villagers lived without electricity for days. No heat, hardly any food, helicopters dropping bread from above, people walking on top of the snow, higher than the gates below, cut off completely, but they survived. Your mum boiled water for washing, a kettle and a bowl. No baths, no showers, just a flannel and lukewarm water that turned cold before you finished. Your dad kept checking the coal supply, calculating how long it would last, burning anything else that would catch. Old newspapers, broken furniture, anything to keep the fire alive, because if the fire went out, you might not survive the night. And then January 10th, the coldest morning Britain had ever recorded. Braemar in Scotland hit -27.2 degrees Celsius, equaling the UK's all-time record set in 1895. But England wasn't far behind. Newport in Shropshire recorded -26.1 degrees Celsius. The coldest temperature ever recorded in England, ever, in over 300 years of records. That afternoon, Braemar's maximum temperature reached -19.1 degrees Celsius. Think about that. The warmest it got all day was nearly 20 degrees below freezing. People who went outside described the air as sharp, like breathing glass. Your lungs ached, your face burned, exposed skin turned numb in seconds. Frostbite in minutes. As far south as Wiltshire, daytime temperatures stayed below -10 degrees Celsius. On January 13th, thick fog covered the country. Visibility dropped to meters, roads became death traps, cars skidded, lorries crashed, multi-vehicle pile-ups, people killed instantly. And still somehow, people tried to carry on. The postman still made his rounds, the milkman still delivered, because that's what you did. But not everyone made it. Some collapsed in the street, heart attacks, hypothermia, falls that broke bones and left people helpless in the snow. But here's what nobody tells you about the deadliest winter of 1982. It wasn't just about survival, it was about humanity. When the snow buried your street, people came out to help. Strangers dug out cars together. The elderly were checked on daily, not just once, but every single day, because that might be the difference between life and death. Families shared what they had. In church halls and community centres, people gathered, not just for warmth, but for company. You'd sit with folk you'd never met, drinking tea, playing dominoes, sharing stories. The cold changed everything. When everyone's freezing, asking for help wasn't embarrassing. It was necessary. and giving it felt natural. The BBC reported the chaos calmly. Severe weather continues. Motorists are advised to take care. No panic, no drama. Just quiet acknowledgement that yes, it's dreadful, but we'll manage. We always do. By mid-January, the cold finally loosened its grip. Warmer air crept in from the west. Snow began melting, roads reappeared, railways cleared, and Britain, tired, frostbitten and covered in soot, began breathing again. When the milk arrived unfrozen for the first time in weeks, people actually cheered. The post came through. Life slowly returned to normal, but it wasn't the same. Over 100 people had died. Families had lost grandparents, parents, neighbors. Funerals were held throughout late January and February. The big snow of 1982 wasn't just about record temperatures, it was about survival. It was about loss. When supplies ran low, Britain didn't break. Neighbors looked after each other, strangers helped. Families sat by one fire, actually talking, actually together, keeping each other alive. We had less back then, but somehow it felt like more. Because when you face death together, when you survive together, you remember what really matters. It's not the cold you remember most. It's the person who knocked on your door with extra coal, the neighbor who checked on your gran, the stranger who pulled your car out of a ditch. If this brought back memories, share your story in the comments and share it with someone who will remember. Were you trapped in the snow? Did you lose someone that winter? Do you remember the day it finally thawed? Please subscribe to my channel to keep these memories alive.